President Trump does. Speaking of which, the left is going nuts over President Trump because President Trump is going nuts over the fact that there is this vast cadre of illegal immigrants who have been attempting to march into the United States. So according to the Washington Examiner, Mexican officials have aided a Holy Week caravan of over 1,000 migrants headed to the U.S. border to demand Easter asylum, according to reports. Mostly Hondurans, they posted celebration videos on Facebook and chanted, "We are migrants, we are not criminals, we are workers." According to an account from the Center for Immigration Studies, Mexican authorities have allowed the migrants to drive north with relative ease. Researcher Kausha Luna added that the group, Pueblos Sin Fronteras, which aids immigrants, bragged about speeding into Mexico. It said on Monday, Pueblos Sin Fronteras posted a video with the caption, "The refugee caravan knocking down borders yesterday in Huehuetan immigration agents abandoned the post when they saw us coming. The people celebrate this first small victory. Locals have provided supplies along the way." So Trump, I think rightly, is upset with the Mexican government for fostering illegal immigration into the United States. This would be a clear case where the Mexican government is not doing its job. The Mexican government has very, very stringent border policies on its southern border, unless it thinks that you're moving right along through up to the United States. In that case, they seem to be perfectly okay with people crossing the border. Right? The border laws in Mexico are extraordinarily harsh. Like if you're an illegal immigrant to Mexico, they will deport you immediately or jail you. Okay? It is much harsher than the strictures in the United States. So President Trump started tweeting about this. And of course, the left thinks that he's wrong to even be outraged about this at all. You know, I think that some of what he says here is not factually correct, but he's not wrong to be outraged at Mexico for allowing this to happen. He says Border Patrol agents are not allowed to properly do their job at the border because of ridiculous liberal Democrat laws like catch and release. Getting more dangerous. Caravans coming. Republicans must go to nuclear option to pass tough laws now. No more DACA deal. Okay, so I agree with the president that that these caravans have to stop, obviously. He tweeted, Mexico is doing very little, if not nothing, at stopping people from flowing into Mexico through their southern border and then into the U.S. They laugh at our dumb immigration laws. They must stop the big drug and people flows, or I will stop their cash cow NAFTA. Need wall. Okay, again, this is about half right. You know, what he says about the Mexican government doing very little to stop people from flowing into the United States is basically correct. Then he says these big flows of people are all trying to take advantage of DACA. They want in on the act. Here's where there's a hole in Trump's logic. The hole is this. It was Trump who decided that he's not going to just deport all these folks, right? Trump has the executive authority already to deport all of these people. He does. Okay, under current immigration law, if he were to just enforce current immigration law, all of these people could be deported. DACA is not the state of the law. He has already revoked DACA. So DACA really has nothing to do with this particular move by people crossing the border illegally, right? In fact, he already revoked that program. So when he says build the wall, you know, the president was elected to do just that. Right now, if he wanted to, he could presumably shift funds from defense measures over to building the wall along those lines. When he says that he's going to do something about NAFTA because that is Mexico's cash cow, again, I don't really appreciate that the president's first move on all this stuff is always to tariffs. Right? His first move is always, we need tariffs and that'll solve all of our problems. You know, killing NAFTA would actually be really bad for a lot of manufacturers in the United States. But where the media is wrong is when they're wrong when they suggest that Trump is being too harsh with Mexico on their facilitation of illegal immigration. They are right when they say that he's obviously not speaking in any sort of reasoned language about DACA. Because again, DACA's on the president. That's an executive policy. If Trump wants to get rid of DACA, he has every ability to do so. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to our brand new sponsors, the folks over at the movie Chappaquiddick. Now, it is a real pleasure. Really, I'm very excited that the folks who made Chappaquiddick are advertising with us because Chappaquiddick, which opens up in theaters on April 6th, is just a fantastic movie. It's a really, really good movie. I've had a chance to screen it. A little bit later in the show, I'm going to have on one of the producers of the film so that we can actually talk about how Chappaquiddick was made, because it's sort of an astonishing thing it was made in the first place. Chappaquiddick is, of course, the story of Ted Kennedy, who drove a woman off a bridge and left her to drown in the car. Really, she suffocated in the car. And the movie does not soft pedal this. And the movie it's not a right-wing screed. Okay, it doesn't go along with, it doesn't try to go beyond what the evidence shows. So, for example, there's nothing in the movie that suggests that Ted Kennedy and Mary Jo Kopechne were clearly having an affair, that she was pregnant, because there's no evidence to support that. But it does stick to the evidence, and the evidence is damning enough. It is an amazing thing that this film got made, and it's an amazing thing that it's getting wide releases. All the performances are universally great, and Ted Kennedy does not come off well in this movie, as well he should not. It took 50 years for this movie to be made, and it is worth every minute of the film. It is just, if you're a conservative and you worry about Hollywood skewing to the left, if you're somebody who said, you know, in the last couple of weeks, I'm watching Roseanne because I want to show Hollywood that my voice counts. Show Hollywood your voice counts. Go see Chappaquiddick. take your family to see Chappaquiddick. It's important to know how the Democrat machine worked in Chappaquiddick. Half the stories about the Kennedy family. Okay, the Kennedy family does not come off well. A lot of the stories about the Democratic infrastructure in law enforcement in Massachusetts at the time does not come off well. Again, really well written, beautifully filmed, beautifully acted, and Chappaquiddick tells the story that the left media has wanted to ignore for 50 years. Remember, after Chappaquiddick, Ted Kennedy still ran for president in 1980, and he almost defeated Jimmy Carter, the incumbent. Ted Kennedy wanted to run in 1984. It did not end his career. Okay, this movie shows you why it should have ended his career indeed. Okay, you're not going to want to miss the story again. Chappaquiddick in theaters everywhere on April 6th. You almost have a moral obligation to go see the film. Okay, so I have a lot more coming up, but for that, you're going to have to subscribe over at dailywire.com. So dailywire.com, $9.99 a month. You get the rest of the show. You get the rest of Andrew Klavan's show, the rest of Michael Knowles' show. And when you subscribe, you also get to be part of our mailbag, which we will be doing a little bit later this week on Friday, which should be awesome sauce. So check that out. Also, if you get the annual subscription, you get the tumbler that I do not have with me because when I'm traveling, I can't bring it. It's just too magnificent. I can't risk it being lost in transit. But you can get it. You can get it in the mail. You can put it next to your bed. You can treasure it. You can drink from it, sip from it, imbibe the glories and wisdom that flow through it every single day. All you have to do is spend $99 a year, and you get our magnificent travel mug. You get our magnificent tumbler. Check it out, the Leftist Tears Hot or Cold Tumbler. Also, if you subscribe, you get to be part of the conversation. So next Tuesday, April 10th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. If you haven't yet joined the conversation series, it's our monthly Q&A hosted by Alicia Krause, where we answer any and all questions from politics to the personal. And this month features our very own Andrew Klavan. It streams live at Daily Wire YouTube and Facebook. But if you want to ask questions, then you have to be a subscriber. So you log into our website, dailywire.com. You head over to the conversation page to watch the live stream. After that, you just start typing into the Daily Wire chat box, and I'll answer questions as they come in for an entire hour. Rather, Klavan will answer questions as they come in for an entire hour. Subscribe to get those questions answered by Drew on Tuesday, April 10th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. Join the conversation. Or if you just want to listen later to the program, check out iTunes or SoundCloud or YouTube. Please subscribe. Please leave us a review. It always helps. We are the largest.
A caravan of more than 1,000 Central Americans, men, women, and children, is traveling across Mexico tonight. Mexican authorities are speeding them toward their destination, which is our country, our southern border. These are not refugees. They are border jumpers. They have no legal right to come here. And that's about the sum total of what we know about them at this point. We don't know if they have skills that we need, whether they speak English, whether they're gang members. We know nothing. Here's what they know about us. They know that if they can cross the border into California, they're set. Democratic politicians in that state will shelter them and give them benefits. From California, they can go anywhere in this country, just like millions and millions before them over the past 30 years. If you're wondering why America is not anything like the country you grew up in, this is why. Will anyone in power do anything to protect America this time? Or will leaders sit passively back as the invasion continues? Over the weekend and earlier today, the president sent a series of tweets that seemed to reflect frustration. Quote, "Act now, Congress," he tweeted at one point. "Our country is being stolen." Well, to that, official Washington scoffed. How dare the leader of our country pretend that we have the right to determine who comes here? What a racist. Here's Jim Shapiro, a former Obama political appointee who now poses as a journalist over at CNN. Watch.
As often happens with issues like this, we enter a fact-free zone. I mean, you got to fact-check the president on this. I mean, first of all, you heard that Fox News rhetoric, an army of migrants. I mean, it's not an army. It's a caravan. It's a group of folks who are seeking asylum. The president tweeted there are caravans as if there are multiple groups of people kind of storming the border. That's not true. It's one group.
Just a group of folks seeking asylum, or propaganda from the Obama people pretending to be reporters. Shut up, America. That's the message. You have no right to complain. That's CNN's view, which means it's the left view as well. Is it America's view? Do voters agree? Do voters think that we have a moral obligation to admit every single person from around the world anytime who wants to come here, feed and house and educate them at our expense, even as our own middle class dies? Maybe voters do think that. I guess we'll find out in the midterm elections. This will help define those elections. Moronis is the founder of Border Angels, a pro-immigration group, and he joins us. Enrique, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tucker.
So I understand that you're for more immigration into the country, but I can't imagine you would support people walking across Mexico and just showing up, expecting to be let in. If that were to happen a lot, we would no longer be a country. So what should we do with these people?
Well, Mexico is not a hostile nation like you mentioned earlier.
Of course
and
it
the
is.
people that are coming from, no, of course it isn't. And the fact that these people are coming from Central America is the same thing that's been going on since Reagan interfered in the Central American policies in the late 70s and 80s. These are people that are escaping violence, escaping hunger. They're looking for refuge, and they're trying to come into the country. And when you have a Border Patrol spokesman like Chris Harris encouraging them to come, telling them, just show up at the border and say asylum, and you're going to get in, that's a lie. That's not the way it works. And it causes these people to flee. They're crossing. They think they're going to be able to get in. Most will not be getting in.
But I'm not really sure why I don't know why you would feel an obligation to defend the government of Mexico, which is abetting illegal immigration into our country, which has been literally for years, which has trained people explicitly with documents that we have on how to get into this country illegally. I don't know why you would be flacking for them. I don't know what's in it for you exactly, but let's stop lying about it. Mexico could stop this right now. Mexico is a very long country. It's a long way from Honduras to Tijuana. They could stop this, but they're not. This is an act of hostility.
The thing is that we allow the freedom of people to be able to travel freely within the country, as a lot of countries do in the world. And I will defend Mexico because you're lying. Why don't you show me a document where the Mexican government is training people, like you just said, to cross into the United States? The Mexican government isn't doing that. Are there people doing that? There may be.
Really? Because they were giving
that,
you know. I'm sorry. I win with superior knowledge here. The Mexican,
superior arrogance.
Of course, it is.
I know you're from San Diego, and your racism and ignorance is very well known.
Right? Okay.
Yeah,
Look,
La Jolla Country Day,
the Mexican government has given instructions to people. I've seen them with my own eyes on how to get across the border. But the point is, this group of people could be stopped any time by the Mexican government, which, again, you feel the need to make apologies for, but they detain people all the time in their country from Central America, as you know. But they're not detaining these people because they say they're going del Norte. So they're a hostile power. But why should we have to accept anybody who comes here?
Most people aren't coming to the United States. Most undocumented people go elsewhere. They have no desire to come here. Of the 250 million undocumented people in the world today, the United States has 11 million. And that flow has shifted dramatically, dropped 40% in the last 5.5 years.
But why should we take any? No, but you're missing it. Why should we take any? There are a lot of people who want to come here legally.
Yeah, but there's no way for these people to come in legally. And the United States interfering in these countries, the demand for the drugs, invading a sovereign land like Iraq, or interfering in the civil wars of Central America, that causes people to flee. The U.S. should be more welcoming.
So our sins are the reason this is. So you hate America, is what you're saying. I don't know why. Actually, it's interesting. You're blaming America for illegal immigration into America. People
Central
come
America
here.
is part of America. Central America is part of America. Mexico is part of America.
The United States is a separate country. It's not the same as Honduras, actually. One-third of all Salvadoran citizens already live in the United States. So at what point can we say we've atoned for our sins in El Salvador?
Stop interfering in the policies of other countries. Stop taking their natural resources. Stop invading sovereign lands. You have a president.
Are we taking the natural resoresources of Honduras right now?
Remember Donald Trump? I mean, that guy, he's an embarrassment to the world. He says they're coming for DACA. DACA ended in 2000. People had to have been here by 2012. Donald Trump doesn't know what he's talking about.
Let me ask you. I'm not asking you your opinions on Trump. I'm not interested. I'm asking you about the policies that are. Hold on. The policies that affect all of us as Americans. And you're saying that Hondurans have a right to come here because we take the natural resources of Honduras somehow? Can you be a lot more specific?
Absolutely. The invasion of the United States of sovereign lands, whether it was the interference in Central America with the Reagan administration.
What do we do to Hondurans?
Well, have you heard of Iran-Contra? Have you heard of the fact that the United States is the #1 consumer of natural resources from other countries? The #1 consumer
in
of
Honduras?
drugs?
So these people are coming here to punish us for bad things we did in Honduras?
No.
Are you representative of people on the left? Is everybody this dumb?
The United States has a large
responsibility.
And when they invade sovereign lands, when they take from sovereign lands, they should be a more welcoming nation, and they are not.
But
there's no legal way for the people to come in. They're desperate. People are crossing
I just want to have a rational,
all over the world.
I just want to have a rational conversation.
They should be able. Yes, we should have one.
All right.
We should have a
Get
rational.
back to me when you can explain what we did to Honduras to deserve this. Thanks, Enrique. Well, a caravan from Central America is walking through Mexico tonight. They're seeking to be let into this country. They're demanding it, actually, The president says he dislikes that idea, so of course he's being called a white supremacist.
A migrant army. Listen to that phrasing there. This is an army. It speaks to an invasion of brown people, right, from Central America. This is the implication there.
Easter wouldn't be Easter without a little brown scare. Right after his Happy Easter tweet, Donald Trump went right after immigrants.
The first guy, by the way, was Jim Scudo, who works at CNN, who was a political appointee for Barack Obama, now pretending to be a journalist. It's too much. Mark Stein joins us tonight. So, Mark, I guess the point that the left is making right now is that we have no right, under any circumstances, to deny people entry when they come here. Period. Doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, what skills they have. It doesn't matter. We have to let them in. Is that the position?
Yeah, basically. And kind of what's wacky about this to me, Tucker, as I understand it, basically half the illegal immigrant population, including these 1,100 people or whatever it will be up to by the time they actually hit the Rio Grande, about half the illegals in this country came here since 9/11. In other words, they broke into a country that's supposedly on orange alert. We're told we're on an orange alert. If law-abiding persons go to an American airport, they're barked at all the time. Be advised, the security coding for today is such and such. And yet at the same time, 1,100 people have announced they're just going to walk into the country, and the United States government throws up its hands and says there's nothing we can do to stop them. Well, in that case, what the hell is the point of Orange Alert? Why are 300 million law-abiding Americans shuffling shoeless through their airports like a bunch of, like a bovine herd? If any of the 6.5 billion people who aren't American around the planet can just walk across the Rio Grande or take a flat-bottom boat and walk into the country. What's the point of Orange Alert?
What's the point of a government, actually? Because the point is that we're the problem. As one of our guests earlier told us, as Jim Scudo or whatever his name is on CNN told us, we're the problem, actually. These are the virtuous ones trying to get in. We're the impediment to their progress. Shut up, America, and obey.
And, you know, he probably doesn't know it. There was a French novel published 45 years ago by Jean Raspail, The Camp of the Saints. A lot of people on the left don't like it. But it actually predicted what's happening before our eyes. A bunch of people got in a ship at India and sailed for the south of France in this novel. And all the media commented, like the CNN guy you just quoted, what's the big deal about this? We are the ones. We are the sinful ones. We are the ones with the stain of all the wicked isms on our past. Imperialism, colonialism, racism. These people are the virtuous ones. Let them in and they will redeem us.
Do you ever get the impression you've been softened up for this exact moment, that people have been telling you to shut up and obey and that you have no moral standing and you're not allowed to give your opinion? Basically, so we get to the moment where you can just be told to step aside and let people come in your place.
I think that's largely what it is, in fact. And that's why I always pay great attention to the left's assault on language. Someone just said, you know, those of us who oppose this are anti-immigrant. Actually, no, I'm an immigrant. Yeah. It's a rather boring thing to be because it involves going to government offices and filling in paperwork. But the left has appropriated that term, so it now effectively means an army of people who don't bother with paperwork, who simply, as your first guest said, simply from being in poor, impoverished countries whose resources the United States has pillaged, supposedly, they have the virtuous right to just walk in to the country.
So why should we care that a statue to President William McKinley, a victim of gun violence, by the way, is about to be torn down in Northern California? It feels like one of those things that's worth paying attention to. Why is it?
Well, I think it's worth paying attention to because it shows that when you hand the left a victory, they move on to the next thing. Rich Lowry, the editor of National Review, said on Fox News last year, he said he didn't feel terribly excited about defending Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis, but you can bet your bottom dollar that if they come after Washington and Lincoln, he'll be right there defending those guys. Well, they're now actually tearing down statues of American presidents, of a guy who took a bullet for his country. once you hand them the first victory, they simply move on to the next ones. And you know what's interesting to me, Tucker? Obama, when he was talking about what he looked for in his judges, said the quality of empathy. Empathy requires us to be able to understand human beings in the age in which they lived. You're not tearing down a statue of McKinley. Right. You're tearing down the representation of all the Americans who voted for him, agreed with him, supported him. You're in fact disowning your own history and saying, I'm just going to live in a hyper-present tense, disconnected from my past.
That is exact, and I knew you could explain it better than anyone I've ever met, and that is exactly right. That's exactly what bothered me about it. Thank you for articulating that. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot,
Mark.
Tucker.
See ya. America's military presence in Syria